Hello all you adorable fluff butts out there, Kit the Soulless here, and today is going to be one of those days. You see, I've had a thought rolling around in my noggin for the better half of a week, and I really don't know how to share this particular thought without asking the dreaded question, why politics? And what I mean by this is, why did we choose to take politics, one of the most divisive and stressful topics that anyone can talk about, right up there with things like religion and sexuality, and try to shoehorn it into every aspect of a fandom that is at its core about a shared love of an artistic aesthetic? Now, I do have a theory, but I have a feeling that a lot of the more famous furries are going to be pretty perturbed at me for even mentioning this, because it feels a lot like our community has been dealing with something called forced conformity. And for those of you who have no idea what this means, well, it's the belief that if you just fall in line and believe what everyone else believes and simply become a part of our society, that you'll be loved and cherished, but the second you step out of line, the second you ask a question, or the second you deviate from the norm, you're suddenly a monster, deserving of nothing less than the hatred and ire of all of society. Something that should be violently cast out, never to be welcomed back to their community. So, you might still be asking, why politics? It's because political power is a way to shape culture, and in a lot of ways it's a way to shape culture by force. Now, as an example, I'm going to use buffalo sauce, because, well, if you know, you know. But let's say I have a friend who dislikes buffalo sauce, but I personally like it. Now, does that have any bearing on whether or not he's my friend? Hell no, he just doesn't like a sauce. But let's say somebody influential in the furry fandom decided tomorrow to say that anyone who likes buffalo sauce is a bigoted, transphobic, homophobic racist. Now, in this example, I'd be pretty screwed, because, as I said, I like buffalo sauce, which means overnight I'd pretty much wind up with a shit ton of conformist furries saying, hey, you like buffalo sauce, you deserve to die, get out of our fandom, you're not a real furry. My friend, on the other hand, would have a dilemma, because those same people would probably be love-bombing the fuck out of him, but at the same time, he's my friend. He probably wants to just say, screw it, let him like what he wants, but if he were to do that, that same crowd would then assume that he likes the sauce too, and therefore he deserves to die too, and he would become their next target. Now, I know some of you out there still don't get it, so I'm going to give another example, but this time understand, this isn't hyperbole, this actually happened. So here goes. Let's say there's somebody who is absolutely enamored with the furry fandom, who is fallen in love with the furry community and wants a fursuit desperately, but is too poor to be able to afford something like a More for Less or a Phoenix Nest. So instead, they go out and buy a mask from Spirit Halloween and spend weeks or even months learning how to alter and adjust it to look something more like their persona. This is something they have spent time and effort on creating, and they're proud that this is what they've made and this is how they can look. But the first time they take it to a convention, they're ridiculed, because that's not a proper fursuit. You're making a mockery of everything we've built in this community. How dare you? Now, as I said earlier, these events actually happened, and it turns out the reason this individual got ridiculed is because the group doing it had been fans of an influential furry content creator who at some point in their history had stated that Spirit Halloween masks are cringy and should not be allowed in furry spaces. So instead of complimenting somebody on something they obviously put time and effort into, they decided instead to try to shame that person into buying a suit they couldn't afford from a maker that was at the convention. And if you still don't get it, well, I could go on and on about problems I see in the community, or giving examples of how to deal with those things on a personal level in your day-to-day life, but the problem with this is it's no different than having a sickness and treating the symptoms rather than the cause. So, going back to the original purpose of this rant, why politics? Well, why religion? Why sexuality? Why anything? If you're asking why politics, well, I hate to point out, it means that you've only just started to think for yourself, but at the same time, it at very least means that you've started to think for yourself. Now you have to make the choice of whether or not you're going to continue to ask why, or simply fall back into the conformist attitude. So we can consider this both a exercise and a choice made, because I'm going to give you until I sit down and reflect upon myself to decide whether or not you want to see what this video is actually about. Oh, and bonus if you actually use the time given to think rather than skipping it. Well, I see that you're still here, so that must mean you're willing to hear what I have to say. Whether or not you're going to like it, though, is another question entirely. But you see, there is a glaring problem in our community, and it's nothing to do with politics or religion or sexuality, but with the fact that we as a community have somehow embraced the idea that hatred is a better medium for expression than love. And I know some of you are going to think that I'm nuts, because of course you have loved ones, you have friends and family, some of you even have romantic relationships. However, that's not what I'm talking about. What would you do for someone you don't know? How about someone you hate? Someone who's wronged you? If the need arose, could you show them compassion as well? Could you put yourself aside and be what they need in that moment? Now that's the actual question here, because I've seen so many in our community who are willing to dehumanize, demonize, and vilify for something as petty as a differing opinion. I've seen people in this community fall on hard times, and instead of being shown compassion and understanding, they're blamed and ridiculed and often even attacked by people that claimed to be their friends or claimed to care about them. And this is entirely what I mean by there's a problem with hatred in our community. So, for those of you who have sat and listened to what I have to say, I have one more thing to ask of you. The next time you're confronted by hatred, whether your own or someone else's, choose love and compassion instead. Because after all, hate can't drive out hate. Only love can do that.